Why your brain loves distractions more than your dreams. Right now, your brain is making a decision that will shape the next few years of your life. It will either keep craving distractions or it will start craving progress. Most people think this choice comes down to discipline. It, do, es. It. If you've ever promised yourself that today would be different, only to find yourself opening social media 5 minutes later, watching one more video, checking one more notification, or delaying the task that could actually change your future, you're not dealing with a lack of motivation. You're dealing with a brain that has been trained to expect instant rewards every few minutes. The scary part is that this isn't happening by accident. Every swipe, every notification, every short burst of entertainment is teaching your brain that the fastest reward is the safest reward. Over time, your mind begins to resist anything that requires patience. Deep work starts to feel painful. Reading becomes exhausting. Studying feels impossible. Building your dream begins to feel heavier than scrolling through someone else's life. Behavioral scientists have spent years studying how repeated rewards shape human habits. Their findings point to something remarkable. Your brain doesn't become addicted to social media, games, or distractions themselves. It becomes addicted to the pattern of immediate gratification. That means the pattern can be changed. Now imagine waking up and feeling an urge to finish your work before checking your phone. Imagine your brain giving you satisfaction after completing a difficult task instead of begging for another distraction. It sounds unrealistic because you've spent years training your mind to do the opposite. But what if the next 17 days could completely change that direction? Not because of motivation, not because of willpower, but because you'll begin changing the way your brain decides what is rewarding. There is a specific moment during this 17-day process when something unexpected happens. Productivity starts feeling easier. Distractions lose part of their power. And discipline becomes less of a fight than you've ever experienced before. Most people never reach that point because they quit just before their brain begins to change. In this video, you'll discover exactly how to reach that turning point, why it happens, and how to make sure your brain never wants to go back. Day 1, 2, 3. Break the dopamine autopilot. The first 3 days are the hardest, not because you're weak, but because your brain is still running on autopilot. Every habit you've repeated over the past months or years has created shortcuts inside your mind. The moment you feel bored, stressed, uncertain, or mentally tired, your brain immediately searches for the fastest source of pleasure. Most of the time, that means reaching for your phone without even realizing it. Researchers who study habit formation explain that this loop follows a simple pattern. A trigger appears. Your brain predicts a reward, and your body performs the behavior almost automatically. The surprising part is that the reward often comes before you even open the app. The anticipation itself releases part of the satisfaction your brain is chasing. This is why simply telling yourself to have more self-control rarely works. You're trying to fight an automatic system with conscious effort, and automatic systems almost always win when they're repeated often enough. So, the goal during the first 3 days is not to become more disciplined. It's to interrupt the autopilot. One of the simplest ways to do this is by creating what behavioral experts call intelligent friction. Make distractions slightly harder to reach, and productive actions slightly easier to begin. Leave your phone in another room before working. Remove social media from your home screen. Close unnecessary browser tabs before finishing your workday. Prepare tomorrow's workspace before going to sleep. These tiny changes may seem insignificant, but they force your brain to pause instead of reacting automatically. At the same time, reduce the amount of decisions you need to make before starting a task. Don't ask yourself whether you feel motivated enough. To begin, decide in advance exactly what you'll work on, where you'll work, and for how long. Every decision you eliminate removes another opportunity for your brain to negotiate with you. During these first days, you probably won't feel productive. In fact, your mind may become louder than ever. That's actually a sign that the old reward system is no longer getting what it expects. Your brain is testing whether you'll return to the familiar pattern. Most people mistake this discomfort for failure and quit. They don't realize they're standing at the exact point where change begins. The next stage is where your brain starts learning something it has almost forgotten. Progress itself can become rewarding. Once that happens, everything starts to shift. DAY 426, teach your brain that progress is the new reward. By the fourth day, something subtle begins to happen. The urge to seek distractions may still be there, but it no longer feels completely automatic. This creates a small window of opportunity. What you do during this stage determines whether your brain keeps chasing instant pleasure or starts associating satisfaction with meaningful progress. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing that the brain works for distant goals. It doesn't. Your brain doesn't wake up excited because you want to be successful in 5 years. It responds to evidence that you're making progress right now. Psychologists have found that visible progress increases motivation far more effectively than waiting for a huge reward at the end. Every completed page, every finished workout, every focused work session tells your brain, this effort is leading somewhere. That message matters more than most people realize. Instead of trying to finish an enormous project, break it into pieces that can be completed within minutes. After each completed section, pause for a few seconds and acknowledge it. This isn't about celebrating with entertainment or checking your phone. It's about allowing your brain to recognize that effort produced a result. Another powerful technique is to end every work session with one unfinished step waiting for you. Leave a sentence half written, keep a document open, or write the next action on a sticky note. When you come back later, your brain won't be facing a blank start. It will simply continue something that has already begun, making resistance much lower. You'll also notice that some tasks become easier after the first few minutes. Specialists who study attention explain that starting is often the most mentally demanding part because your brain is switching from comfort to effort. Once that transition happens, maintaining focus usually requires much less energy than you expected. This is why productive people often appear incredibly disciplined. They're not constantly forcing themselves to work. They've trained their brains to experience satisfaction from making progress instead of waiting for perfection. But there's another obstacle that catches almost everyone. Even if your reward system starts changing, hidden drains on your mental energy can quietly destroy your focus without you noticing. Before you can make productivity feel natural, you need to eliminate those invisible leaks. Day 7 to 9, the hidden energy leaks destroying your focus. Most people believe they lose focus because they get distracted. The truth is often the opposite. They become distracted because their mental energy has already been drained long before they sit down to work. Imagine trying to fill a bucket full of holes. It doesn't matter how much water you pour in if it keeps leaking out. Your attention works the same way. Every unnecessary decision, every notification you ignore, every unfinished task sitting in the back of your mind quietly consumes mental resources. By the time you finally begin working, your brain is already exhausted. Researchers studying attention have observed that the human brain is not designed to constantly switch between different types of information. Every time you jump from work to a message, from a message to email, from email to social media, your brain spends energy rebuilding concentration. These tiny interruptions seem harmless, but together they create hours of lost focus every week. This is why many people mistake mental fatigue for laziness. They think they need more motivation, when what they actually need is fewer interruptions competing for their attention. During these 3 days, your mission is to protect your focus before you use it. Silence notifications instead of relying on willpower. Keep only the tools you need visible on your desk. If possible, work with a single browser tab or a single application at a time. Every unnecessary option becomes another invitation for your brain to leave the task. Pay attention to open mental loops as well. If you suddenly remember something you need to do later, don't keep repeating it in your head. Write it down immediately and return to your work. Specialists in productivity have long explained that your brain is far better at generating ideas than storing reminders. A simple note frees mental space almost instantly. You'll probably notice something surprising by the end of this stage. It's not that you've gained more hours in your day. It's that you're wasting far fewer minutes recovering from constant interruptions. Those minutes add up, creating longer periods of deep focus without requiring extra effort. Now your environment is working with you instead of against you. But the biggest transformation still hasn't happened. Up to this point, you've been changing your behaviors. The next step changes something much more powerful: the way you see yourself And once your identity begins to shift, discipline stops feeling like something you have to do and starts feeling like who you are. Day 10 to 12. Rewire your identity. Not just your habits. This is the stage where most people either transform or quietly fall back into old patterns, not because their system failed, but because they're still trying to act like a disciplined person while secretly believing they're someone who Your brain pays close attention to the stories you repeat about yourself. If you constantly think, "I've never been consistent, I always lose motivation," or "I'm just not productive," your mind begins looking for evidence to prove those statements true. Every distraction reinforces that identity, making the next distraction even easier to justify. Behavioral researchers have found that lasting habits become much more stable when they are connected to identity instead of outcomes. In other words, people don't consistently act because of what they want. They act because of who they believe they are. From this point forward, stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" That question gives control to your emotions. Replace it with a different question. What would a disciplined person do right now? Your feelings may not change immediately, but your decisions will. And repeated decisions slowly reshape identity. There's another shift that makes this process even stronger. Stop measuring yourself by perfect days. Measure yourself by the number of times you return after getting distracted. Everyone loses focus. The difference is that productive people recover quickly, instead of turning one distraction into an entire wasted day. Think about someone who exercises regularly. Missing one workout doesn't make them believe they're no longer an athlete. They simply continue the next day. Apply the same mindset to your work. A single mistake is an event, not an identity. By now, your brain has experienced several days of progress. It has seen that focused effort produces results. Every completed task becomes another piece of evidence supporting a new set. Eventually, your mind begins expecting productive behavior because it matches the person you believe you are becoming. But there is still one powerful force that can pull you backward. Even with a stronger identity, distractions can remain emotionally attractive. The next stage will reverse that equation by making every unnecessary distraction feel more expensive than the progress you're about to lose. Day 13 to 15. Make distractions feel emotionally expensive. Most productivity advice focuses on making work more exciting. But your brain doesn't always choose what feels good. It chooses what seems most valuable in that moment. If distractions appear cheap and harmless, you'll keep returning to them, even when you know they're stealing your future. Here's the shift that changes everything. Stop asking what a distraction gives you. Start asking what it takes from you. One quick look at social media rarely costs 5 minutes. It breaks your concentration, slows your return to deep work, and often leads to another distraction. Before you realize it, an hour has disappeared. Your brain remembers the short burst of pleasure, but it conveniently ignores the hidden cost. Psychologists have observed that people make better decisions when the consequences become immediate and visible. That's why saving money is difficult, while spending feels easy. The reward is instant, but the loss feels distant. The same pattern exists with distractions, so make the cost impossible to ignore. Every time you interrupt a focused session, write down what you were working on, how long it took to regain concentration, and what opportunity was delayed because of that interruption. After a few days, you'll stop seeing distractions as harmless breaks. You'll start seeing them as expensive habits that keep charging interest. Now do the opposite with productive actions. Make their benefits visible. Keep a record of focused hours, completed tasks, pages read, workouts finished, or skills practiced. Your brain needs evidence that effort creates momentum. The more visible your progress becomes, the more valuable productive behavior feels. There's another powerful technique. Before opening any distracting app, pause and ask yourself one simple question. Will I be proud that I chose this 10 minutes from now? That short pause interrupts automatic behavior and forces your rational mind to step back into the decision. By the end of these 3 days, something unexpected begins happening. You're no longer resisting every distraction through willpower. Many of them simply lose part of their appeal because your brain has learned to associate them with wasted time instead of relief. This prepares you for the most important moment of the entire challenge. On the 16th day, your brain begins creating a cycle that can keep building productivity almost automatically. And once that loop starts, everything accelerates. Day 16. The productivity addiction. By the 16th day, you may notice something that seemed impossible just 2 weeks ago. Starting a task doesn't feel like a battle every single time. The resistance hasn't completely disappeared, but it no longer controls your decisions. That's because your brain is beginning to operate under a different reward system. Many people think motivation comes first and action comes second. In reality, the opposite is often true. Researchers who study behavior have repeatedly found that taking action creates momentum, and that momentum increases the desire to continue. Waiting to feel motivated keeps you stuck. Moving first gives your brain a reason to produce more motivation afterward. This is where the productivity loop begins. You start one small task. Your brain notices progress. That progress creates a feeling of satisfaction. Satisfaction makes it easier to begin the next task. The next task builds confidence. Confidence lowers resistance. Lower resistance leads to even more action. Without realizing it, you've replaced the old cycle of distraction with a new cycle of progress. Distraction used to work the same way. One notification became 5 minutes. 5 minutes became 30. 30 minutes became an evening of procrastination. Now the pattern is reversed. One completed task leads to another, and each success makes the next decision slightly easier. The key is to protect this momentum. Don't stop working just because you feel capable of doing more. End your sessions while you still have energy, and leave yourself with a clear first step for tomorrow. This creates anticipation instead of resistance, making it much easier to restart the next day. You'll also notice that confidence no longer comes from positive thinking. It comes from collecting evidence. Every promise you keep to yourself sends the same message to your brain. I'm becoming someone who follows through. That belief becomes stronger with every repeated action. You're now standing at the edge of the biggest transformation in this entire challenge. The final day isn't about becoming more disciplined. It's about reaching the point where your brain genuinely begins to prefer progress over distraction. Once that shift happens, the version of you that struggled to get started starts feeling like someone you barely recognize. Day 17. The point of no return. If you've made it to the 17th day, you've already accomplished something far more important than completing a challenge. You've begun changing what your brain considers rewarding. That is the real victory. Think back to how this started. Picking up your phone felt automatic. Sitting down to work felt difficult. Your brain had been trained to expect immediate stimulation, so anything that demanded patience felt like a threat instead of an opportunity. Now compare that to where you are today. You still experience distractions. You still have moments when your attention drifts, but something fundamental has changed. You know how to interrupt the impulse before it becomes an action. More importantly, you've experienced the satisfaction that comes from making progress, and your brain remembers it. Neuroscientists explain that the brain strengthens the pathways it uses most often. Every time you choose focused work over instant gratification, you reinforce the circuits that support discipline. Every time you repeat that choice, it becomes a little more natural and requires a little less effort. This is why the goal was never to become a perfect person. Perfection creates pressure, and pressure often leads people back to old habits. The real objective was to make productive behavior feel familiar enough that your brain starts choosing it with less resistance. You'll know you've reached this turning point when simple changes begin appearing in your daily life. You start opening your laptop without arguing with yourself. You finish tasks before looking for entertainment. A notification appears, but you don't feel an urgent need to check it. Progress begins creating a deeper sense of satisfaction than temporary distraction ever could. That doesn't mean you finish rewiring your brain. It means you've built enough momentum that continuing becomes easier than starting over. And that's exactly why these 17 days matter. They aren't the finish line, they're the foundation for everything that comes next. The challenge now is no longer convincing yourself that change is possible. The challenge is protecting the version of yourself that you've spent the last 17 days building. In the final chapter, you'll learn how to make sure your brain keeps strengthening this new identity instead of slowly drifting back to the habits you worked so hard to leave behind. Never let your brain go back. Here's something most people never realize. Your brain never stops learning. It doesn't reach a point where it says, "I'm done." Every single day, it's reinforcing the behaviors you repeat the most. That means you're never standing still. You're either strengthening focus or strengthening distraction. This is why so many people feel productive for a few weeks and then suddenly fall back into old habits. They assume the transformation is permanent, so they slowly reintroduce the same behaviors that trained their brains to crave instant gratification in the first place. One unnecessary notification becomes several. One day without structure becomes a week. Before long, the old reward system quietly takes control again. Protecting your progress doesn't require working harder. It requires staying aware. Keep making distractions slightly more difficult to access. Keep making productive actions easy to begin. Keep collecting evidence that you're someone who finishes what you start. These small decisions may seem insignificant on their own, but together they determine which version of your brain becomes stronger over time. Remember, discipline isn't about fighting yourself every day. The highest level of discipline is designing a life where the best decision becomes the easiest decision. That's how lasting change is built, not through endless motivation, but through systems that guide your behavior even when motivation disappears. So ask yourself one final question. 17 days from now, which brain do you want to wake up with? The one that automatically reaches for distraction every time life becomes uncomfortable, or the one that naturally looks for progress because that's where it has learned to find satisfaction? The answer won't be decided tomorrow. It won't be decided next week. It will be decided by the choice you make immediately after this video ends. If this video changed the way you think about productivity, subscribe to the channel and join a community that's learning how to rewire the brain for deeper focus, stronger discipline, and lasting performance. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, what's the first distraction you're removing from your life today? That one decision could become the beginning of an entirely different future.